imagine looking at a timeline of modern technology, right?
Okay.
And on the far left side, you have a computer slowly figuring out how to bounce this little square digital ball across a black screen.
Ah, yeah, the 1970s arcade game, Palm.
Exactly, Palm.
Okay.
Now, if you trace that line all the way to the right, like to the very other end, you have a literal Nobel Prize in chemistry.
Right.
And the artificial intelligence engine powering basically the most advanced world-altering systems on the planet.
I mean, it is a staggering trajectory. You are looking at a direct through line from a retro video game to a system that fundamentally decodes the building blocks of human biology.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are mapping out that wild evolution, looking through this massive, constantly updated dossier we have on Google DeepMind. And this covers everything up through March 2026. By the way, you realize this isn't just a standard corporate history.
No, not at all.
The mission for this deep dive is to figure out how a relatively niche gaming lab in London became the absolute epicenter of the global AI arms race.
Yeah.
And more importantly, how the systems they built are already quietly running the background of your daily life.
Yeah, because what we are really tracking today is the evolution of a very specific concept, which is reinforcement learning.
Right.
That is the mathematical engine connecting, like you said, a vintage arcade game to a literal breakthrough in cancer research.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the beginning. It's November 2010, London. Three founders, Demis Hassabis, Shane Legg, and Mustafa Suleiman.
Yeah.
They start this company called DeepMind. And their goal, right out of the gate, is incredibly audacious. They didn't want to build an AI to just do one specific thing.
Right, because, I mean, we all remember IBM's Deep Blue in the 90s, right?
Oh, yeah, the computer that beat Garry Kasparov at chess.
Exactly. Deep Blue was a marvel, but it was hard-coded by humans specifically to play chess. If you asked Deep Blue to play checkers or, I don't know, boil an egg,
It just crashed.
it would completely crash. It didn't actually know how to learn.
But DeepMind wanted to build a general-purpose AI, right? Like an intelligence that could learn anything, totally from scratch.
Yeah, and to build a brain that can learn anything, you need a safe environment where it can fail millions of times without causing real-world damage. So their testing ground was vintage video games.
Which makes sense, but the way they did it is what absolutely blows my mind. They didn't feed the AI the actual code of the game.
No, they did.
They just fed it the raw pixels on the screen. Think about a game like Space Invaders or Breakout.
Yeah.
The AI was given zero prior knowledge. I mean, no rule book at all.
Nothing. It didn't know what a spaceship was or what a paddle was, or even that the concept of a score even existed.
It just mashed buttons randomly.
Pretty much. But here is where that reinforcement learning kicks in. The AI takes an action, sees the result on the screen, and gets a mathematical reward if its score goes up. It then updates its internal neural network to favor that specific action. It's essentially mimicking human cognitive processes, just trial and error.
It's like dropping a kid in a room with a hyper-complex board game and absolutely no rule book. They just start moving pieces around. But by the end of the week, they are the undisputed world champion.
That's a great way to put it.
And Google saw this happening, realized the huge potential, and swooped in by 2014, acquiring DeepMind for somewhere between $400 and $650 million.
Which is what gave them the resources to tackle the holy grail of artificial intelligence at the time, which was the ancient board game Go.
Right, because Go is a whole different beast than chess. You can't just brute force calculate your way to a win.
No, absolutely not. The game has more possible board configurations than there are atoms in the observable universe.
Which is just a crazy statistic.
It is. And that's exactly why experts thought an AI beating a human at Go was easily a decade away. You need something akin to human intuition to evaluate a board state that complex.
But then, in 2015, their program, AlphaGo, beat the European champion, Fan Wei.
Yeah.
And the following year, it beat the world champion, Lee Sedol, 4-1. It sent a massive shockwave through the global tech community.
It really did. But the real paradigm shift wasn't beating Lee Sedol. It was what happened the following year with a program called AlphaGo Zero.
Oh, this part is wild.
Yeah, so the original AlphaGo learned by studying 30 million human moves. It learned from us. But AlphaGo Zero was given zero human data.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. It just played against itself millions of times. And within 3 days, it played the original AlphaGo, the one that beat the world champion, mind you, and defeated it 100-0.
Wow. 100 to 0.
That is the moment everything changed, because when an AI learns from human data, it inherits our limitations, our blind spots, basically.
Right.
By generating its own data through self-play, AlphaGo Zero discovered entirely new strategies. It proved that human knowledge wasn't the baseline for artificial intelligence. Human knowledge was the bottleneck.
And they took that exact same self-play concept and applied it to real-time strategy games too. Like by 2019, a program called AlphaStar reached Grandmaster level in the video game StarCraft 2.
Which is incredibly hard.
Yeah, in StarCraft, you don't even see the whole board. You have hidden information, you have to manage economic resources, and you have to plan long-term strategies in real time while your opponent is actively attacking you.
It requires immense strategic depth. But, there is a crucial limitation here.
What's that?
Games like StarCraft or Go, no matter how incredibly complex they are still closed systems.
Oh, right.
They're digital sandboxes with perfect, unbreakable rules. If DeepMind wanted to build a truly general intelligence, they had to take this digital brain and apply it to the messy, unpredictable, open-loop system of the physical world.
And that pivot from games to reality starts in a very practical place, Google's own data centers.
Yeah.
These massive server farms generate an insane amount of heat, and keeping them cool takes a ridiculous amount of energy. So in 2016, DeepMind brings their reinforcement learning AI in to manage the cooling systems.
Right. So the AI was given control over things like fans, cooling towers, and chillers. It started reading all the sensor data, like temperatures, pump speeds, power usage.
Okay.
And because it wasn't burdened by human assumptions about how a building should be run, it started recommending actions that longtime human operators found completely unintuitive.
Like what? Give me an example.
So, for example, it figured out how to aggressively exploit winter conditions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it realized that if it dynamically adjusted the system to draw in specific amounts of outside cold air at exact times, it could produce colder than normal water for cooling. And that allowed it to shut down other power-hungry systems entirely.
Wow.
It recognized complex thermodynamic patterns that human engineers simply couldn't see.
The human engineers were probably looking at the screens, terrified, but they followed the AI's recommendations, and it ultimately saved Google 30% on energy used for cooling.
Which is massive at that scale.
Yeah. Every time you run a Google search today, it requires less electricity because an AI treated a building like a giant puzzle. But taking over a thermostat is one thing. Solving a 50-year-old biological mystery is another. We need to talk about AlphaFold.
Yes, AlphaFold. This is really their crown jewel.
Yeah.
For decades, biology faced this grand challenge, which was protein folding. Proteins are the building blocks of life. They start as a long string of amino acids, but then they crumple and fold into highly complex 3D shapes.
Right.
And the specific shape of a protein dictates exactly what it does in the human body, whether it causes a disease or cures one.
Okay, but here's where I struggle, though.
Okay.
I understand how an AI can predict a chess move or figure out space invaders, but how does playing a game against yourself translate to predicting how a microscopic protein physically folds inside a biological cell?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think of it like a microscopic, hyper-complex piece of origami.
Okay.
If you fold the paper wrong, the cell gets a disease. If you fold it right, you create a cure. The problem is, a single protein can fold in an almost infinite number of ways. It would take longer than the age of the universe to test every possible shape manually.
Wow.
But at a foundational level, nature operates on rules, the laws of physics and chemistry. So DeepMind basically treated protein folding as a spatial optimization game.
So instead of trying to maximize a high score in a video game, the AI is trying to find the most stable, energy-efficient 3D structure based on the laws of physics.
Precisely. It looks at the sequence of amino acids and predicts the distance and angles between every single pair of them.
And it actually works.
It absolutely worked.
Yeah.
By July 2022, AlphaFold had predicted the structures of over 200 million proteins.
And that's practically all of them, right?
That is virtually every protein known to science, yes.
Which fundamentally changed biological research overnight. I mean, Dimas Hassabis and John Jumper literally won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this.
Yeah.
And according to the source material, they just kept pushing. In 2024, they released AlphaFold 3, which expanded the AI to predict how proteins interact with DNA and RNA. It bumped the accuracy on DNA interaction tests from a baseline of 28% all the way up to 65%.
And then they took that same underlying philosophy-finding patterns and massive chaotic data sets and applied it to the atmosphere.
Right.
In mid-2025, DeepMind launched Weather Lab.
Now, weather forecasting is notoriously difficult. How does an AI approach a hurricane differently than, say, the meteorologists we see on the local news?
Well, traditional forecasting relies on rigid, physics-based models, supercomputers crunching massive fluid dynamics equations.
Right, lots of math.
Right, but DeepMind took a different route. They train what are called stochastic neural networks on 45 years of global weather data.
Okay.
Yeah, stochastic just means it embraces randomness and probability. Instead of relying purely on rigid equations, the AI looks at decades of chaotic historical weather patterns and learns the probabilistic rules of the atmosphere.
So it's pattern recognition on a planetary scale.
Exactly.
And the dossier notes that during the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, this Weather Lab AI actually outperformed the U.S. National Weather Service's traditional models.
It did.
It was predicting the formation and tracks of hurricanes up to 15 days in advance.
Giving cities an extra week to prepare for a disaster is just a monumental leap.
It really is.
But, predicting the physical world, whether it's weather or proteins, is fundamentally an analytical task. By 2023, the entire tech industry was obsessing over a completely different kind of AI, generative AI.
The ability to create things from scratch.
Right.
Right. OpenAI drops ChatGPT and the world goes crazy. Google obviously had to respond. So in April 2023, DeepMind merges with Google Brain to form Google DeepMind. Their mandate was clear tackle human language, reasoning, and creativity.
And this merger marks their entry into the generative arms race. They became the engine behind Google's consumer-facing AI, specifically the Gemini models.
And the evolution here happens at a blistering pace. Like by March 2025, they released Gemini 2.5. And the key innovation here wasn't just generating text, right?
No, it was the introduction of a feature where the AI actually pauses to think before responding.
Right. It simulates human reasoning. Instead of just spitting out the most statistically likely next word, it takes a beat, explores different logical paths, verifies its own work, and then gives you the answer.
Exactly. And they followed that up in November 2025 with Gemini 3 Pro, which is a fully multimodal reasoning model deeply integrated into Google Search.
But they didn't just hoard this technology for themselves. They also released the Gemma series.
Yes, the Gemma models are what we call open-weight models. So a foundation model is the massive underlying brain trained on vast amounts of data. Usually companies lock these behind APIs.
Like, you can talk to it, but you can't see the engine.
Right. But open-weight means DeepMind actually released the core architecture and parameters to the public, allowing developers to run and modify the AI on their own hardware.
Which leads to easily the most fascinating project in the entire dossier, in my opinion, Dolphin Gemma, released in April 2025.
Oh, yeah. This was a highly specialized attempt to decode dolphin communication.
It's just wild. We spend decades aiming satellite dishes at outer space looking for alien intelligence, and DeepMind is using AI to talk to the highly intelligent aliens swimming in our own oceans.
That's a great analogy.
But how do you even begin to map a language when you have no Rosetta Stone?
Well, you treat the audio like an unknown linguistic structure. The AI analyzes thousands of hours of dolphin clicks and whistles. Doesn't know what the words mean, obviously, but it looks for statistical patterns in the noise.
Okay.
It learns the syntax. It figures out that when dolphin A makes this sequence of clicks, dolphin B responds with that sequence. By mapping these structural relationships, the foundation model can potentially generate novel, contextually accurate dolphin-like sound sequences.
It's structural linguistics driven by raw computing power.
Exactly.
And that computing power extends to human media, too. The source details an explosion in audio and video generation.
Yeah.
In May 2025, they launched VO3. This isn't just generating a silent video from a text prompt.
No, it generates video with perfectly synchronized audio simultaneously.
Yeah, you type in a prompt, and it hallucinates the visuals, the dialogue, the sound effects, and the ambient noise all at once, mathematically perfectly synced.
And they did the same for complex music generation with Lyria 3 Pro in March 2026.
But the absolute peak of this generative era has to be Project Genie, which became available to premium subscribers in January 2026.
Yes.
Project Genie sounds like science fiction. You give it a single 2D image or just a text prompt, and it generates an entire playable, interactive 3D virtual environment. How is that computationally possible in real time?
It's essentially hallucinating a physics engine on the fly. When you interact with the environment, say, you command your character to jump, the AI predicts what the next frame of that world should look like based on its deep understanding of spatial dynamics. It is generating the rules of a world in real time as you move through it.
We're talking about an AI creating entire realities from scratch. But what happens when you use this technology to mediate the reality we actually live in?
Ah, right.
There's a 2024 experiment mentioned in the source called the Habermas Machine. DeepMind brought together groups of people with highly polarized, differing views to debate a topic.
Yeah.
And they used AI to mediate the discussion and try to find common ground.
And the results were really striking. Participants actually rated the AI summaries and proposed compromises higher than a human moderator's 56% of the time.
Wait, really? It was better than a human?
Yes. It's taking the temperature of the room and finding the mathematical center of gravity in a human debate. An AI, completely free from human ego or emotional bias, was just better at identifying our shared values than we were.
It is a profound proof of concept. But pulling this off in the real world hasn't been without serious friction. Moving fast and breaking things works perfectly when you're playing Space Invaders.
Right.
When you enter healthcare, academia, and critical infrastructure, the guardrails are very different.
This raises an important question about how society audits AI. Because the source material highlights several major controversies where DeepMind's ambitions slammed right into those guardrails.
But we have to look at the facts here. Take the NHS data controversy back in 2016.
Yes.
DeepMind Health developed an app called Streams. The goal was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Alert doctors to acute kidney injury early to save patients' lives. But to train the system, they gained access to the healthcare data of 1.6 million UK patients.
And the central issue there was consent. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office investigated the arrangement and ruled that the hospital trust involved had failed to comply with the Data Protection Act.
Because the patients simply were not adequately informed that their medical data was being handed over to a tech company for app development.
Exactly. Furthermore, DeepMind had initially promised that this patient data would be kept strictly separate from Google accounts.
But later on, Google just absorbed the health division anyway. Privacy advocates pointed out that this looked like a blatant betrayal of the initial promises made to the public.
Yeah, and you see a similar friction within the scientific community itself, where DeepMind's corporate PR often clashes with the demands of academic rigor.
Consider the alpha chip debate.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
Yeah. DeepMind claimed they were using reinforcement learning to design computer chips. Imagine a city planner trying to fit millions of buildings into a microscopic grid.
Right.
The AI treats that silicon layout like a game board, placing components to minimize wire length and energy use. DeepMind claimed this reduced chip design time from weeks to mere hours, and that these AI designs were actively being used in Google's own hardware.
Which sounds like a revolution,
Yeah.
but independent experts and publications like Communications of the ACM pushed back heavily on this. The criticism was that DeepMind failed to provide transparent, independent benchmarks. In the scientific community, if you claim a superhuman breakthrough, you have to share the underlying comparative data so other researchers can independently verify it.
Right. You can't just say, trust us, it's faster.
Exactly. And we saw the exact same skepticism with Genome, their materials science AI. DeepMind announced this tool had discovered millions of new crystalline structures. They essentially claimed to have revolutionized materials science overnight.
But then, researchers like Anthony Cheatham published reviews stating the tool failed to make a useful, practical contribution.
Right. When human scientists actually dug into the data, they found that the vast majority of these new materials were just minor, highly predictable variants of structures we already knew about.
I see.
They weren't practical breakthroughs. It highlights the inherent tension of this era, a corporation eager to announce world-changing abilities versus a scientific community demanding rigorous, peer-reviewed proof.
To their credit, the dossier notes DeepMind is attempting to self-regulate as these systems get more powerful. They formed a DeepMind Ethics and Society unit, and in 2024, they introduced a robot constitution for their AI products.
Which is heavily inspired by Isaac Asimov's science fiction laws of robotics. Rule number 1, a robot may not injure a human being.
So what does this all mean for the listener?
Yeah.
We have an AI that is smart enough to win a Nobel Prize, but still needs a literal robot constitution so it behaves.
It sounds a bit theatrical, I know, but you realize why it's necessary when you see that models like Gemini Robotics are now being deployed to control actual physical robotic arms in the real world.
Oh, wow.
You need hard-coded behavioral guardrails when the AI can physically interact with its environment.
It means intelligence is scaling faster than our traditional societal frameworks can comfortably accommodate.
Exactly.
Which brings us full circle. DeepMind is no longer just a bunch of researchers in a London lab trying to teach a computer to play a vintage arcade game. It has become the invisible infrastructure of your daily life.
It really has.
Think about it. When you pull out your phone to check a 15-day hurricane forecast. Wait, no, let me rephrase that. When you pull out your phone to check that forecast, that is DeepMind's weather lab running the probabilities.
And when you watch a video on YouTube and it loads instantly on a cellular connection, that's DeepMind's Zero algorithm, which quietly optimized the compression to reduce video byte rates across the entire platform by 6.28%.
Even the battery inside your Android phone.
Yes.
If you have adaptive battery turned on, it is using reinforcement learning to study your habits, predicting which apps you'll open, and routing power accordingly. DeepMind is actively optimizing your reality right now, literally in your pocket.
Which leads to one final concept from the source material that is just, well, it's worth lingering on.
Oh, yeah.
In May 2025, DeepMind unveiled something called AlphaVolve.
This is the one that really gets me.
So AlphaVolve is an evolutionary coding agent. It uses advanced language models to design, test, and optimize its own algorithm.
Wait, its own?
Yes. It writes a piece of code, tests its efficiency, mutates the code to see if it improves, and selects the best version to iterate on. It is an AI that has already matched or beaten state-of-the-art human algorithms in dozens of complex mathematical problems.
Look at the progression here. DeepMind started by teaching AI to play video games.
Right.
Then they taught AI to solve biology and physics, and now with AlphaVolve, they are teaching AI to write better AI.
The loop is closing. It leaves us with a profound question for you to mull over. If human developers are no longer the primary bottleneck for creating and refining intelligence, what do the next 5 years look like when the AI is the one driving its own evolution?
That is the ultimate question. From the jagged pixels of a 1970s TV screen to an intelligence that is rewriting its own source code. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep an eye on how these invisible systems are shaping your world. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.